Right, let's dive into this whole PayPal thing. We've got these excerpts from the founders, which, it's more than just your average business book. It's about this crazy, ambitious group of people, how they almost crashed and burned a bunch of times, and how that whole experience ended up shaping, like, the biggest names in Silicon Valley. Seriously, get ready for some mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, what really struck me about the book is how it lays bare all the trauma behind PayPal's success. It wasn't just like a straight shot to the top, it was
And
this chaotic mess of personalities clashing, constantly having to change direction, and this work culture that was part frat house, part like genius factory.
For real. And the book does a great job of digging into, like, the founding team's backgrounds, which are anything but ordinary. Take Max Lepchin, for instance. The guy learned to code by literally writing code with a pencil in a Soviet park. Can you imagine? Computer time was so scarce back then. It just shows you the dedication.
Oh, absolutely. It speaks volumes about his drive and ingenuity, even way back then. And then you've got Peter Thiel, a chess master, with a totally contrarian way of thinking. Like, he was already seeing the world differently from everyone else, always questioning everything. That kind of fearlessness, intellectually, it became a defining characteristic of his whole career.
And of course, you can't forget Elon Musk. Even back then, he was already convinced that traditional banking was, like, begging to be disrupted. But what's cool about the book is that it doesn't just state the obvious, it actually goes deep into the practical challenges they faced. I mean, they were getting rejected by investors left and right, struggling to get funding, and hitting all these technical roadblocks. There's even the story about Levchin, like daisy-chaining credit cards to keep the company afloat, which is just wild.
That's such a perfect example of the whole risk-taking culture that was baked into PayPal's DNA from day one. It wasn't just about having a brilliant idea. It was about being willing to put everything on the line to make it happen. And that willingness to take risks, it applied to their technology too.
Oh, yeah, totally. Speaking of which, the whole beaming at Bucks demo story had me on the edge of my seat. They were trying to prove that they could send money between Palm Pilots, right? And the code was barely working just days before they had to show it off. The fact that they managed to pull it off under that kind of pressure, it's a testament to how brilliant they were technically.
It's easy to forget that this was like the prehistoric era of mobile technology. They weren't just, sending a text. They were basically inventing a secure mobile payment system from scratch. It was a massive technical achievement, and ultimately, it's what helped them secure their first big chunk of funding.
But even with that funding, things were far from smooth sailing. Then comes the whole X.com Confinity merger, which was less of a merger and more like a clash of the titans. You had Confinity super focused on viral marketing tactics, like that $10 sign-up bonus, trying to get users as fast as possible.
Yeah, that strategy they used is what we call growth hacking now. And it was pretty revolutionary back then. It was all about using, unconventional, often cheap tactics to achieve explosive growth, like marketing on steroids.
I can only imagine how burning through cash to grow their user base must have created some tension, especially with Elon Musk's X.com in the picture. I mean, here's this ambitious financial services venture coming at it from a totally different angle. Talk about a recipe for conflict.
Oh, absolutely. And the book doesn't sugarcoat any of the chaos that followed. Musk's initial offer was seen as a lowball, the negotiations were tense, and the company cultures were just like oil and water. The X.com people were more of your traditional finance types, while the Confinity team was known for being scrappy, almost rebellious engineers.
It's so fascinating to see how all these contrasting personalities and visions played out. It makes you wonder, though, if that rivalry, while intense, actually pushed them to innovate in ways they wouldn't have otherwise. Was it a driving force or more of a roadblock?
That's a really interesting question. And the book seems to suggest that it was a bit of both. All that friction definitely led to some serious internal drama. There was a vote of no confidence against their CEO, Harris, and eventually even Musk himself got ousted in a boardroom coup. It just goes to show that even in the fast-paced world of startups, these power struggles can have huge consequences.
And that particular struggle led to Peter Thiel coming back as CEO, which basically set the stage for PayPal's next chapter. But before we jump into that, I just gotta say, it's wild to think about everything they went through. Technical challenges, funding woes, internal power struggles, and all this happening while the tech landscape was changing so rapidly. It's a testament to their resilience and adaptability that they even survived.
Yeah, and that survival instinct, that willingness to adapt and overcome, it would prove to be super valuable as they entered the battleground of eBay.
Which is where things get really interesting. It wasn't just a partnership. It was a straight-up fight for dominance in the online marketplace. We'll dive into all that right after this. So PayPal is born out of this like chaotic environment, and now they're stepping into the eBay arena. It's like, high stakes poker, winner takes all.
Oh, yeah, that's a great analogy. The book really nails that intensity, how PayPal was so laser focused on becoming the way to pay on eBay. I mean, they were relentless, going after auction users, creating tools specifically for eBay sellers. They even became sellers themselves just to get a feel for the platform from the inside.
Wow, like they were undercover trying to learn all of eBay's secrets. And it worked, at least for a while. PayPal became the go-to payment option. But with that success came a whole new set of problems, right? Like the book talks a lot about their constant battle against fraudsters.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge issue. And it wasn't just some kids messing around. You had these sophisticated scammers creating fake accounts, using stolen credit cards. You got to remember, this was the wild west of the internet, way before all the security measures we have now.
So how do they even begin to tackle something like that?
Well, they had a secret weapon, Max Levchin. The book paints him as this coding genius who basically became a digital detective. He'd, go into these hacker forums, learn all their tricks, and then boom, he'd develop countermeasures like TCHAs.
Well, he was fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. And they had to be incredibly creative and adaptable just to stay one step ahead of the fraudsters.
It's a really cool glimpse into the early days of cybersecurity, this constant cat and mouse game.
But even with all that, their biggest headache was still eBay itself. It wasn't enough to just be the preferred payment option. There was this constant threat of being shut out completely. Yeah, it was this tense back and forth. The book details how eBay kept launching their own payment services, trying to compete. They even went as far as blocking PayPal's scripts. Imagine trying to build a business on someone else's platform while they're actively trying to sabotage you.
Talk about stressful. It must have felt like they were building their castle on sand. And all of this is happening while the dot-com bubble is bursting. They're trying to secure funding. And oh yeah, 9/11 just happened. Talk about a pressure cooker.
Seriously, it really highlights just how resilient they were. And for anyone who wasn't around for the dot-com bust, it was basically this period of insane growth in internet companies.
Yeah.
Everyone thought it would last forever, and then boom, massive crash. It was a crazy time for any startup, let alone one trying to revolutionize finance.
So in the middle of all this chaos, they're getting ready for their IPO. That must have been a roller coaster in itself.
Oh yeah, the book captures all the anxiety and excitement leading up to it. It was a huge gamble, but it paid off, at least at first. They celebrated, the stock went public, it seemed like they had finally made it.
But going public, a lot of times, it's just the start of a whole new set of challenges.
Exactly, and for PayPal, those challenges eventually led to them getting acquired by eBay, which, as you might guess, wasn't exactly a happy ending.
More like a shotgun wedding, maybe.
Yeah, spot on. The book takes you behind the scenes of all these tense negotiations, the people on eBay's board who were against the deal. And even after everything was signed, there was still all this tension.
So even in victory, there was conflict. It makes you think, did this whole crazy journey, this constant struggle, did it shape the people who came out of PayPal?
Absolutely, and that brings us to the heart of it all, the PayPal Mafia, this group of alumni who would go on to reshape the entire tech world.
From this pressure cooker of an experience came some of the most influential people in Silicon Valley. How did that happen? We'll explore that in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've talked about the wild ride of PayPal's early days, the whole eBay saga. But the thing that really gets me is the legacy that came out of it all, the infamous PayPal Mafia.
Yeah, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and it's definitely controversial. But you can't deny the impact this group of alumni has had. I mean, we're talking about the founders of Tesla, SpaceX, LinkedIn, YouTube, Palantir. And that's just scratching the surface. Their influence on tech is massive.
It really is like a Silicon Valley all-star team. And to think they all cut their teeth in this crazy, intense, high-pressure environment. So what was it about PayPal that turned them into the titans they are today? Was it just luck, or was there something more going on?
The book digs into that question, and it seems like there were a few key things. First, they all went through this shared experience, this trial by fire, They were constantly fighting for survival, making tough calls, adapting to this ever-changing landscape. It created a bond between them that you just can't replicate.
Yeah, it wasn't just about surviving, though. The book also talks about the specific culture they had at PayPal.
Right, absolutely. They embraced ambition, risk-taking. Failure wasn't a bad thing. It was a chance to learn. And because everyone was so young and kind of green, there was this feeling of anything's possible. They really believed they could change the world.
So it was this combination of facing huge challenges together and having this culture that encouraged bold ideas and experimentation. But it
Hmm.
goes even further than that. The book also highlights how these alumni kept supporting each other even after leaving PayPal, investing in each other's companies, offering advice, mentoring. It's like this self-sustaining cycle of success.
And that's where the whole mafia label, while maybe not the most accurate, starts to make sense. It points to the strength of those networks, those relationships that were forged in the trenches of PayPal and continued to pay off long after they moved on.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about. This group starts out trying to figure out how to send money between Palm Pilots, and they end up shaping so much of our digital lives. But here's where the book takes a really unexpected turn. It tells this story about how the PayPal Mafia inspired two inmates, guys serving life sentences, to come up with their own master plans.
Yeah, that story is powerful. These inmates, Stephen and Chris, they saw the PayPal Mafia as a positive example of a gang. This network of people supporting each other's goals. It gave them hope, a new perspective on what's possible, even in prison.
It's a good reminder that the impact of this whole PayPal story goes way beyond Silicon Valley. It speaks to that basic human need for connection, for support, for believing that we can do great things, even when things are tough.
It's really the power of inspiration, how a story of ambition and achievement can resonate with anyone, anywhere.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into PayPal, it's clear that this is about way more than just a payment company. It's about resilience, adapting to change, the power of human ingenuity. It's about the impact of a unique culture and the lasting influence of strong networks and mentorship.
And it leaves us with some big questions. How do we create environments that encourage that kind of ambition and creativity? How do we build those networks that support us and push us to be our best?
Because the real legacy of PayPal is this idea that anyone, anywhere, can create their own PayPal Mafia, a group of people dedicated to helping each other achieve their dreams and shake things up.
So as you keep reading the book, think about this. What's your master plan? And who are the people you need in your corner to help you make it happen? Because, as the PayPal story shows, the possibilities are endless.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of PayPal. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to more reading and resources about the PayPal Mafia and Silicon Valley history. Until next time, keep diving.